That they were called the angels of the presence means two things. First, it means that they enjoyed a special honor. In an Oriental court, it was only the most favored courtiers who had the right at all times to the presence of the king. To be a courtier or a counselor of the presence was a very special honor. Second, there was more than honor here. Although to be in the presence of the king meant special honor, even more, it meant immediate readiness to be dispatched on service. This week on Connecting the Gap, we're continuing our study on prophecies of the Bible, and we're going to be going through Revelation chapter 8 verse by verse. We're going to get into that right after this. Welcome to September. Hello, everybody. This is Connecting the Gap. I'm Daniel Moore, the host of this podcast. Thank you once again for coming and checking us out again this week as a brand new episode has landed as we continue our study on prophecies of the Bible. And we are now in Revelation going verse by verse as we continue this extended study. I believe we're in episode 82 of our podcast since we started this endeavor over a year and a half ago. And I want to thank all of you that have stayed with me. Hopefully from the very beginning of this, and as we gain new listeners each week, if you know other people that would like to maybe listen to some Bible study like this and go through God's Word, please pass us along to them. If they are a podcast listening person, you can go to my website at connectingthegap.net. And there you can check out all the podcast platforms that I am on each week. And we're also on Rumble, YouTube, and the podcasting app Edify. So you can check all that out there at our website. Also, you can find out how to be saved there if you're not saved or know somebody that's not. And a contact page, please contact us if you enjoy our podcast and drop us a line because we'd love to hear from you. We are in a study now that's put out by Damon Duck, and I want to continue that this week as we get into Revelation chapter 8, and we're going to go ahead and get right into this. Chapter 6 described the opening of the first 6 seals, but it ended before reaching the 7th seal. Chapter 7 covered the sealing of the 144,000, but likewise failed to mention the 7th seal. It is not until chapter 8 that we learn about this final seal. The opening of the 7th seal reveals the appearance of 7 angels with 7 trumpets. Note the pattern being established. The 7 seals were broken down into 2 sets. The 4 horsemen followed by 3 additional judgments. Likewise, the 7 trumpets will be broken down into 2 sets. 4 judgments called 1/3 judgments, followed by 3 judgments called woes. After 1/2 hour of silence in heaven, the judgments will take place on the earth. Revelation chapter 8 verse 1. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. When this seal is broken, the scroll will be completely open. Nothing will remain to restrain the carrying out of the remaining judgments. Before they can begin, though, there will be silence in heaven for about a half hour. The flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder coming from the throne of God will cease. The 4 living creatures will cease their talk about the holiness of God. The 24 elders will suspend their declarations about the worthiness or the merit or qualifications of Jesus to open the seals of the Lamb. The heavenly hosts will stop their singing, and the tribulation saints will cease their praise. An eerie, foreboding silence will move across heaven. Everyone will wait in anticipation of what is to come next. Will people be given time to repent? Will God destroy the earth? Something will be on the horizon, something of tremendous importance. Revelation 8 verse 2. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. The tribulation period carries many names: the time of Jacob's trouble, the 70th week of Daniel, and the day of the Lord's vengeance. The prophet Zephaniah gives it 7 different names, and it is significant to notice that the last one is a day of trumpet and alarm. That's Zephaniah 1:14 through 16. Out of all the angels in heaven, only 7 particular angels constantly stand in the presence of God. They are most commonly known as archangels, but some call them the angels of the presence. The 1611 King James Version of the Bible identifies only two, Michael and Gabriel, but the Apocrypha, non-canonical books that are usually omitted from Protestant Bibles, identifies the other five as Uriel, Raphael, Raguel, Remiel, and Sariel. These seven archangels who make announcements of great significance will each be handed a trumpet on this day of trumpet and battle cry. Notice that these are angels that receive the trumpets in heaven as they stand before the throne of God and Jesus. God will judge the earth, but not without purpose. Society can't expect God to ignore the persecution and death of the saints on earth. Society can't expect him to be unoffended by the blasphemy of the Antichrist and the false prophet. Society can't expect him to delay his answer to the prayers of the righteous forever. Paul said it is a righteous thing for God to repay those who harm his people. That's 2 Thessalonians 1, 6 through 8. In Revelation chapter 8, verse 3, then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayer of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. This here speaks of an eighth angel. Even though this eighth angel is not identified, some experts believe he is Jesus. He could be Jesus, but he is probably just another powerful angel. We do know this angel holds a special position of service before the golden altar of God. This golden censer is similar to the one used in the Old Testament Jewish temple. It contained charcoal that was burned under a layer of incense. When the hot charcoal warmed a layer of incense, a sweet fragrance was produced. This fragrance or aroma may be that of the spice frankincense, one of the gifts the wise men gave to baby Jesus. Frankincense was also one of the spices burned in the censer at the Jewish temple. Its fragrance reminds God of his Son, who came and died for the sins of the world. The eighth angel will come with a golden censer and stand before the altar of God. He will be given a great quantity of incense to mix with the prayers of the saints. Then he will place the censer on the golden altar before the throne of God. In Revelation chapter 8, verse 4, and the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Revelation 8:3 told us that the eighth angel will be given the prayers of all the saints. We may never know what all these requests may be, but Revelation 6:10 identifies one of them as a prayer of the tribulation saints. How long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Judgment is not God's first choice, but patience is. He is patient and will hold off all his judgment longer than any man. Nevertheless, when all options fail, his judgment will fall. The angel will take the censer containing the hot incense and the prayers of the saints and wave it around, causing the smoke to drift toward the throne of God. The Almighty God will smell the incense, hear the prayers, and prepare an answer. In Revelation chapter 8, verse 5, then the angel took the censer, filled it with the fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. When the incense and all the prayers of the saints have been consumed in the censer, the angel will take the empty censer, go back to the altar, fill it with fire, and hurl it down on the earth. The prayers will go up to God, and the answers will come down to earth. God will avenge the death of the tribulation saints with fiery trials on earth. Try to visualize this great scene. The Antichrist and the false prophet will rise to power, leading the inhabitants of the earth to worship Satan, while at the same time, God's people will be hunted down, persecuted, and killed. These martyred saints will arrive in heaven, praying to be avenged. At first, they will be told to wait until the number of saved is increased. But then, after a brief time, God will hear their prayers and respond by having his angel hurl the burning censer, possibly in the form of a meteor, to the earth. This will be a clear statement of God's wrath. It will be followed by loud thunderclaps, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. The earnest prayers of God's hurting people will finally reach into his wrath and cause a response that will be felt by the whole earth. Jack Van Impe was quoted, futurist Gordon Michael Scallion, the editor of Earth Changes Report, has been suggesting for months that a frightening global killer earthquake pattern is emerging. He is predicting that a series of magnitude 10.0 quakes will rip up America's west coast in the next few years. In Revelation chapter 8, verse 6, so the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Once the burning censer has hit the earth, the archangels will prepare to sound their trumpets. The prayers of the saints will be heard, and the whole world will be ripe for judgment. God's wrath will be kindled to unleash the next set of judgments, and the archangels will prepare to sound the alarm. Revelation 8 verse 7, the first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. Some experts will not accept a literal fulfillment of this verse. However, prophecy experts have little difficulty believing this will happen. The 7th plague on Egypt in the days of Moses was a rain of grievous hail mixed with fire that smote the cattle, herbs, and trees. It was a plague directly against Egypt's false goddess, Isis. God also rained hail, fire, and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah. There is no reason to believe that he will not do it again. The result of hellfire and blood being hurled down upon 1/3 of the earth in a furious storm is almost unimaginable. Not only will it cause immediate and indescribable destruction, it will also bring about many other terrible consequences. Much of the lumber needed to build houses will be gone, along with much of the grain used for food. The entire balance of nature will be upset, and the loss of life will be horrendous. Still, to not recognize the grace of God would be a mistake. For along with his great wrath that will burn 1/3 of the earth, there will flow an ocean of love to allow 2/3 of the earth more time. Hal Lindsey was quoted, "With this massive loss of vegetation will come soil erosion, floods, and mudslides. Air pollution will be immense, and smoke of the fire will fill the atmosphere, and the remaining vegetation will be unable to adequately absorb the hydrocarbons from automobiles and industry. Ecology will be thrown chaotically out of balance." Jack Van Impe was quoted, "Comet Shoemaker Levy 9's impact on Jupiter grabbed the attention of the entire world. Was it a sign? Enormous explosions, hundreds of times more powerful than all the Earth's nuclear warheads, made people realize just how vulnerable our planet is to a similar occurrence." If God opposed the false goddess Isis, would he not oppose any other false gods or goddesses? As we move on to Revelation 8, verses 8 through 9, it says, "Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and 1/3 of the sea became blood, and 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed." So the first trumpet will signal judgment upon the earth. This trumpet will signal judgment upon the sea. It reminds us of the first plague on Egypt in the days of Moses, which turned the water into blood. It was a plague directed against Egypt's false goddess Heka that killed the fish and frogs and made the water unfit for consumption. Pay close attention to the wording in this verse. It does not say a burning mountain will be thrown into the sea. It says something like a great burning mountain will be thrown into the sea. Some think it will be a nuclear missile. Others think it will be a burning meteor. Whatever it is, it will be big, blazing, and cause the sea to turn into blood. It will kill 1/3 of sea life and destroy 1/3 of the ships. Those who depend upon the sea for jobs, food, defense, or cargo transport will suffer. As a result of this mountain hitting the sea, it is likely that everything close to the sea will probably be damaged or destroyed by a great tidal wave. In Revelation chapter 8, verses 10 through 11, "Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on the 1/3 of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. 1/3 of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was made bitter." Some believe this star blazing like a torch will be a meteor. Others suggest a nuclear missile. While they hold different opinions about what it is, they usually agree about what it will do. A great blazing object containing some type of pollutant or poisonous substance will fall out of the sky. It will be named after a bitter herb called wormwood. That's a bitter, intoxicating, and poisonous herb in the Bible. It will contaminate 1/3 of Earth's fresh water supply, causing many people to die from drinking the tainted water. Although the Bible does not say, it is reasonable to assume that many others will die from thirst. With 1/3 of the fresh water tainted, most people will be unable to obtain drinkable water before extreme thirst sets in. Adults will survive without water for about 3 days, while the sick and infants will have fewer. Why? Well, in the days of Jeremiah, God said, I will feed them with wormwood and make them drink of the water of gall, for from the prophets of Jerusalem profaneness has gone out into all of the land. That's Jeremiah 23:15. The prophets of Jerusalem should have been decrying evil by giving out the pure water of the word, but they were catering to the normally corrupt by giving out the poison water of false doctrines. Hence, God judged them. David Hawking was quoted, "This tragic judgment affecting the water supply of the world and bringing about the death of many is a consequence upon those who refuse to submit to God's authority in their lives. We all need water. It is basic to human survival. One can only imagine what sort of additional tragedies will occur because of the terrible pollution caused by this third trumpet judgment." In Revelation chapter 8, verse 12, then the fourth angel sounded, and 1/3 of the sun was struck, 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars, so that 1/3 of them were darkened. 1/3 of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. The fourth trumpet judgment will affect the heavenly bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Pagan religions worship these objects. Astrologers, fortune tellers, and witches rely on them to predict the future. A few bizarre interpretations of this judgment exist, but the generally accepted meaning is that the light of the sun, the moon, and the stars will be diminished by 1/3. We can be sure that smoke from the burning of 1/3 of the earth will block out a lot of the light from the sun, the moon, and the stars. Nuclear winter brought on by smoke, dirt, and debris being hurled into the atmosphere is also a possibility. How long this will continue is not said, but there is no question that a reduction of the Earth's sunlight will affect the weather, crops, and all of life in general. Major winter storms will sweep the Earth, causing multitudes to freeze to death. The World Encyclopedia says nuclear winter refers to the deadly worldwide environmental effects that could result from a major nuclear war. Such a war could bring on nuclear winter by causing disastrous changes in the Earth's atmosphere and climate. Nuclear winter could begin to develop from city fires created by the extreme heat of nuclear explosions. Large amounts of smoke from these fires could spread and cover at least half the Earth's surface. The smoke could prevent most sunlight from reaching the ground. Temperatures could drop substantially and the rainfall could be reduced. These conditions might last for several months or years. With greatly reduced sunlight, less rain, and lower temperatures, farming could stop and worldwide famine could result. In Revelation 8, verse 13, and I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. Who or what is this angel? Some say it will be the raptured church. Others say it will be an eagle. One thing is for sure, if God can make Balaam's donkey talk, he can make an eagle talk. This angel will fly through the air, pronouncing 3 woes upon the inhabitants of the earth. These 3 woes correspond to the last 3 trumpets. Some even call them the trumpet woes. It is hard to imagine, but these woes will be worse than any judgments previously mentioned. J.H. Melton was quoted saying, Long was the old world left to drive its crimes, jeer at Noah's odd notions, and fling defiance into the face of God. But presently the earth broke down beneath their feet, and their lifeless bodies clashed upon each other amid the waves of an ocean world. The trampled law will assert its rightful honor, and Christ will not endure the smiting taunts and wrongs of Pilate's hall forever. And when these trumpets once give out their clangor, the vibrations will run through the universe, and everything created for human blessedness will turn into a source of disaster and trouble to them that know not God and obey not the gospel of Christ. That's going to wrap up chapter 8 of Revelation. And we've still got some minutes left here this week, so we're going to go ahead and get started into Revelation chapter 9. Interpreting the symbols in the book of Revelation is one reason why it's considered one of the most difficult books in the Bible. Readers have to seek John's explanation of the symbols or search other books of the Bible for explanations that seem to fit. But John offers few explanations for what is recorded in chapter 9, and a search of other books is not very helpful. It's difficult to believe and kind of scary, but some of what has traditionally been considered symbolic may not be symbolic after all. People will be dealing with the subterranean world, so it's entirely possible that some of the hellish characteristics of these creatures are literal. In that case, no explanations are needed, and the judgments may be more fearsome than once thought. Now it's time to read about the fifth and sixth trumpet judgments that correspond to the first and second trumpet woes. But keep in mind that John said the 7 stars in chapter 1 were symbols of angels. So in Revelation chapter 9 verse 1, "Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from the heaven to the earth. To him was given the key of the bottomless pit." This is not a literal star. This is not even a star that will fall, but one that has already fallen, Satan. Revelation chapter 9 verse 2 refers to this star as a he. The prophet Isaiah said, "How you are fallen from the heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground." That's Isaiah 14 verse 12. Satan will be cast down indeed. He will be given the key to his subterranean or beneath the earth's surface home called the bottomless pit. That's a deep pit where demons are kept. The bottomless pit, or the abyss, is a place of torment where the worst of his demonic spirits are held and from where the Antichrist will come forth. Some people think Jesus was referring to the bottomless pit when he said, "For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." That's Matthew chapter 12, verse 40. N.W. Hutchings was quoted, "This may be the same event later described by John in Revelation 12:9, when the Satan and his angels are cast down to the earth." Jesus also prophesied of this same future defeat of Satan in Luke 10:18. "And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning falling from heaven." David Jeremiah and C.C. Carlson were quoted, "The pit that has been the home of the demons is the Greek word for abyss. We have a picture of a vast depth approached by a shaft whose top is covered. It is a sobering thought to realize that many of the demons of hell are not free to hurt us in this present age. Satan is managing to do a good job of destruction today without his entire war corps to back him up." In Revelation chapter 9 verse 2, "And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit." Here Satan will descend and open the bottomless pit. When he does, a thick black smoke will rush out, covering the earth in darkness. The sky will be blackened and the sun will be obscured. Following the terrorist attack on World Trade Center towers in New York City in 2001, the burning buildings collapsed. Gasping for breath, people ran away from the smoke and debris. In a similar manner, the open abyss will spew forth pollutants like a gigantic furnace or volcano and make breathing difficult and convulsive. In Revelation 9:3, "Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power." Locusts will come out of the smoke, but not locusts as we know them. They will not be the short-horned grasshoppers that have plagued people around the world. Instead, they will be demon-possessed and have horrible features, part human and part animal. These locusts will be like scorpions. They will have stingers to stab and poison their victims. Victims rarely die from the sting of a scorpion, but often turn black and blue and go into convulsions. The pain is unbearable. What could be worse than millions of demon-possessed locusts dive-bombing us like mosquitoes? The World Encyclopedia says many locusts can make a sound by rubbing their rigid hind legs on their front wings. This causes the wings to vibrate, which makes the noise. Plagues of crop-destroying locusts have been known since ancient times. One swarm by the Red Sea was believed to cover an area of 2,000 square miles. Swarms of migrating locusts are sometimes so large they shut out the sunlight. They interfere with railroad trains, airplanes, and make automobile travel dangerous. Jesus once visited the Gerasenes, that's the descendants of the Jewish tribe of Gad, where he encountered a demonic-possessed man living among the tombs. The demons begged Jesus not to cast them out into the abyss, so he cast them into a herd of pigs instead. The demons would rather be cast into pigs than cast into the abyss. Revelation chapter 9 verse 4, "They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green living thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads." As intelligent as these demon-possessed locusts will most likely be, it's ironic that they will still be under God's control. They will harm only those who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads, the 144,000 Jews. The evil empire of the subterranean world will have to obey, and even though God will be angry with the wickedness on earth, he will still demonstrate his mercy and grace. Even though locusts eat plants, God commands these locusts not to harm the grass, plants, or trees. We may wonder why, but can only speculate how locusts could not eat their most staple foods. Perhaps it will be because the earth may be in such ecological chaos that any further damage by locusts would destroy it altogether. If the grass, plants, and trees were gone, the earth could no longer produce oxygen, and if there was no oxygen, God's people would not survive during the millennium. In Revelation chapter 9, verse 5, "And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man." These locusts will not kill, but only torture for a period of time not to exceed 5 months. They will be the masters of suffering by inflicting pain similar to a scorpion sting. God could let them kill, but he sometimes uses suffering to bring people to salvation through Jesus. God could let the torture last for more than 5 months, but his grace will restrain it. David Hawking was quoted, "While a scorpion sting is usually not fatal, although children often die from such a sting, it is painful. The venom affects the veins and nervous system. Normally the pain and discomfort lasts for several days. This plague lasts for 5 months. In Revelation 9 verse 6, "In those days men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them." During these 5 months of the tribulation period, people will hurt so much they will want to die. Their nervous systems will become infected, parts of their bodies will swell and hurt, and other parts will fail to function altogether. Some will suffer seizures and convulsions, and others will lose consciousness. Many will take medicines that fail to provide relief. Because of this torture, many will try to commit suicide, but God will not let them find death to end their suffering. They will be wise to accept Jesus. Some things are worse than death. J. Vernon McGee was quoted, "It is not a laughing matter to reject Jesus Christ. It is not a simple thing to ignore him. People say there are so many important things in life. I am willing to grant that many things take second, third, and fourth place, but the most important thing is your decision concerning Jesus Christ." In Revelation chapter 9, verses 7 through 10, it says, "The shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth, and they had breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men for 5 months." How would you describe a locust? I'm sure you wouldn't say it has a body shaped like a horse, hair like a woman, and 2 eyes like a man, but that's what John saw. The word "like" appears 8 times in this verse. Obviously, John is using comparisons and symbolic language to describe these demon-possessed locusts will look like. They will have bodies shaped like a horse prepared for battle. Something similar to a crown of gold will adorn their heads, and their faces will resemble that of a human. Their manes will be long like a woman's hair, and their teeth will be small and sharp like a lion's. They will have tails like a scorpion, and their wings will sound like an army of chariots. Does the sound of a mosquito bother you? Hope you never hear the sound of one of these frightening monsters. Oliver B. Green was quoted, "In Italy and some other foreign countries, locusts are called little horses, and some of them resemble a horse." John F. Walvard was quoted, "Demons and angels can take on appearances other than human, and the description of the locust who stung like scorpions does not fit any category of men or beast." Wrapping up this week with Revelation 9 verse 11, "And they had as a king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon." This unnatural army of locusts will be under the direction of an angelic king. Some say this angelic king will be Satan, but it seems more likely he will be one of Satan's powerful assistants. Satan will not be one of the demons confined in the abyss. He is the fallen star who opens the pit to let this angelic king and his ungodly army loose. This must be one of Satan's top henchmen. His Hebrew name will be Abaddon, meaning destruction, and his Greek name Apollyon, meaning destroyer. Since his name is given in both Hebrew and Greek, he will probably be permitted to attack both Jew and Gentile alike. His name is given twice, so it is a double warning of his destructive powers. Jim Combs was quoted, "This may be a fallen principality, such as in Ephesians 6:12, and not Satan himself, but rather a high-ranking fallen angel, a follower of Satan in his original rebellion," that was talked about in Isaiah 14:12-14. J.H. Melton was quoted, "Most Bible students underestimate the power of the devil. To do so is a grievous error. The misery of Satan has wrought in God's creation, and in mankind should be reason enough to recognize his power and mind." We're going to go ahead and stop there this week for our episode of Connecting the Gap, as we have reached about the middle of chapter 9 here in Revelation. Next week, we will start with Revelation chapter 9, verse 12, in our study on prophecies of the Bible as we go through Revelation verse by verse. Thank you guys once again for joining me this week for Connecting the Gap. This is a study by Damon Duck, and you can go to my website, connectingthegap.net. There you can see all of the podcast platforms I'm on where you can subscribe, and you can also check out our YouTube and Rumble channel as well. All of that is on our website at connectingthegap.net. Well, I'm going to be out of here for this week, and I'll be back again next week with another new episode of Connecting the Gap as we continue through Revelation. Until then, remember that God's Word never fails us. God's Word has stood the test of time, and through Jesus' death on the cross, He has connected the gap.